So I want to introduce my colleague, Minister Ahmed Hussen, who's the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. I've had the privilege of working with the Minister since 2015 when we were both elected. He was appointed Minister of Immigration and Refugees in 2017. He was appointed to his current portfolio in 2019. I've worked with him side by side. I've seen him up close. I've seen how dedicated he is. I've seen how hard he works. And it really is an honor for me to work alongside him. And I want to introduce him, call him up, and just say thank you for being here in Etobicoke Lakeshore. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to everybody here. So, Minister, please join us at the podium.
Thank you so much, James. It's a pleasure to be back in Etobicoke Lakeshore, and it's an honor to serve with you. James, in addition to being the Member of Parliament for Etobicoke Lakeshore, is also our chair of the Liberal 416 caucus, representing the voices of the Toronto community area. So it is a pleasure to be with you all. I hope everyone is well. And I'd like to thank once again MP Maloney and the Honourable Stephen Lecce, Minister of Education for Ontario, for being here. Minister Lecce and I have been working hard to ensure that Ontario families have access to affordable, quality and accessible early learning and childcare. Le ministre Lecce et moi avons travaillé d'arrache-pied pour faire en sorte que les familles ontariennes aient accès à des services d'apprentissage et de garde de jeunes enfants abordables et de qualité. We both want to ensure that every child gets the best possible start in life. We both want to make sure that as families emerge from this unprecedented and extraordinary pandemic, that they're well equipped to recover from this pandemic and re-enter the workforce. Canadian families are still struggling, as you know, with the impacts and the negative impacts and the dislocation of the COVID-19 pandemic. Parents are worried about returning back to work and about sending their kids back to school and to daycare. I am a father of 3 young boys, and this is a conversation that is occurring in my households as it is occurring in many, many households in Ontario. So first and foremost, I want to reassure Canadians and Ontarians in particular that our priority remains the health and well-being of everyone. And so in that regard, we are very much focused on the safe restart and reopening of our economy and our society, and making sure that Canada remains more resilient to any future possible waves of this virus. So particularly in these times, families in need have to have access to safe, affordable, quality and accessible childcare as we slowly and safely reopen our economy. This is, as James Maloney said, this is more than a convenience, this is more than a luxury, this is a necessity. That is why our government, the federal government, entered into bilateral agreements with provinces and territories in early learning and childcare in 2017 to provide them with over $1.2 billion over 3 years for early learning and childcare programs. This started in 2017 and 2018 and will provide an additional $400 million in 2020-2021. And that is why I'm really, really happy to be here to announce that as part of this $400 million investment nationally, more than $147 million will be provided to the province of Ontario this year to invest in early learning and childcare. This is in addition to the $234 million that is the share of Ontario's federal dollars for early learning and childcare as part of the Safe Restart Agreement. This means collectively that new licensed childcare spaces will become available, that more Ontario families will benefit from subsidized childcare spaces and childcare subsidies in general. It will also help offset the costs associated with the COVID-19 pandemic in this sector. As you know, the early learning and childcare sector across the country has been heavily impacted by this pandemic. And they have had to obtain, of course, personal protective equipment. They've had to obtain cleaning supplies and invest a little bit more in other necessities. And so this will offset these extra additional dollars will offset the associated costs with COVID-19 closures and reopenings in Ontario for childcare centres. As I said, this money that I'm announcing today is on top of the $625 million that the federal government is providing to provinces and territories to address the reduced availability of childcare and the unique needs stemming from the pandemic across Canada with the Safe Restart Agreement. Again, Ontario's share of that federal money was $234 million. So this year, collectively, the Government of Canada will invest almost $1.2 billion in total early learning and childcare in Canada. And almost $400 million of that money will be invested right here in Ontario. That is a record amount of money that the federal government is providing to Ontario for early learning and childcare. So I want to assure Ontarians that the Government of Canada is looking forward to continuing to work with the Government of Ontario to ensure that Ontario families continue to have access to safe, affordable, quality and accessible childcare. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
I'm just curious about the Liberal strategy for prioritizing kind of recovery spending. Obviously, there's a lot of different areas where people are hurting, especially in marginalized communities, the homeless. It seems like there's going to needs to be a lot of spending. So what is the strategy that the federal government is looking at when deciding where and when to spend money?
I think we've always prioritized individuals and families and workers, and that has been, if you look at since the pandemic started, our focus has been to make sure that Canadians are able to put a roof over their heads, pay their rent, pay their mortgage, and also put food on the table. So if you look at our extension of the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, the recent announcements with respect to help for businesses, everything is geared towards helping families. The increase to the Canada Child Benefit, the increases we've made to funding in early learning and childcare to help that sector bounce back. It's about enabling folks to deal with the economic shocks of the pandemic and then bounce back and recover stronger. And our efforts are showing early promises. You saw the latest job numbers demonstrated an addition of 419,000 new jobs into the economy. We're not out of the woods yet, but we are on the right track, and we'll continue to have the backs of Canadians and continue to put the supports necessary in place to make sure that people can stay employed and be able to pay for their necessities.
Given the Ford government's cuts to childcare in 2019, I was just wondering if there are any conditions attached to this agreement, to the extension of it.
The collaboration that we have with the province of Ontario is long-standing in the area of early learning and childcare. I want to add to what the minister said with respect to this renewal of the agreement. In addition to extending it for another year to give certainty to the sector, we are making the federal dollars flexible to be used for any response to COVID-19, because we understand that the sector has gone through a lot of difficulties. As your colleague noted, some of them have closed, and so these particular challenges are based on the fact that some of them were operating on very thin margins. So they need help with PPE, they need help with cleaning supplies, they need help with ECs and other needs. So the funding that we're providing to Ontario is more flexible than ever before, precisely because we understand the nature of the need has evolved because of COVID-19. In terms of the affordable, accessible, quality spaces, that's something that is ongoing work between us and will continue. We have a long-term plan, $7.5 billion to create many thousands of affordable spaces for Canadian families. But make no mistake, the COVID-19 response includes early learning and childcare, and this agreement is in addition to that. The agreement extension reflects the reality of COVID-19 because we're making the funding flexible, but we haven't stopped, we haven't removed foot from the pedal when it comes to the long-term investments, to the 250,000 space commitment for before and after school spaces. We have a lot of ambition in this sector, and Ontario is a great partner for our ambition because they're equally ambitious and responsive to this sector.